Hey, hey, hey. What's up, guys? Welcome back to episode 9 of For the Love of Hockey podcast. Before I introduce my guests today, I just want to say if any Maple Leafs players are watching this, I want to say as a Leafs fan, I do not stand for anything that people have been saying to you guys on social media. I think it is absolutely unacceptable and disgusting. Anyone that has made those comments really needs to give their head a shake and apologize to anyone you have said those comments to. Now, on today's episode, I managed to get not one, but two familiar faces that I've already had on the pod. My first guest, you guys might remember him from episode 4. Please welcome Clark Munroe back to the pod.
Hey, how's it going? I have so much to say about Mitch Marner today. I heard your thing off the top, but I might have to go. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But happy to be back, Dylan. This is exciting.
Awesome. Thank you. And you might remember this guy from episode 7. Please welcome Zack Kelly back to the pod as well.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Boo.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to waste any time here. At the beginning of the series, I feel like the three of us probably all thought that this was only going 5 or 6 games. I mean, I think, in my opinion, I thought it was Toronto going to win. I'm sure both of you did as well.
Yeah, I had Toronto in 6. Even as a Habs fan, I had Toronto in 6. I didn't, I didn't expect it to go any other way. Maybe we'd be able to push it to 7, but I definitely didn't expect, especially going down 3-1.
Yeah, I had Leafs in 5. I made a couple videos on it, got bashed pretty hard, but especially after the fact. But I just thought there was too much swaying it towards Toronto's side for it to go very long. But Montreal came out with a game plan, and I feel like if we're getting right into it right now, I feel like once game 5 got underway and Toronto got down early, I feel like for whatever reason, something clicked and they started panicking. And I don't know if it's the scar tissue from every year, the last 3 or 4 years coming back to haunt them or what it was. But when Montreal was able to score first, both of those games, and then they just kind of went into like a shell defensive game where they just basically played the trap for the rest of the game and then jumped on a couple opportunities. I feel like that's kind of what did it in for Toronto. Is they just weren't able to crack that defensive, basically just like dome that they put around the net. And they couldn't get any traffic in front of Price. They lost the physical battle every single game. And it's hard to win a playoff game when you're down 2-0 or 3-0. It's hard to do. They were able to come back both games, but then you get into overtime. And to me, they were exhausted from the comeback, emotionally exhausted from the comeback. And then they had nothing left for overtime. So I think it's a massive lesson learned for the organization. I'm sure we'll get into that. But it was masterful playoff hockey by Montreal. And I've made a couple of videos since, and I can't take any credit away from how the Canadians did that, because to me, that's the bigger storyline than the Leafs collapsing. I mean, that's not the bigger storyline, but it's the bigger underlying storyline is that Montreal caused this. It's not that Toronto necessarily shot themselves in the foot. To me, Montreal beat Toronto, and that's the way I'm looking at it.
And what was weird for me going into it is like my biggest like concern on the Toronto side was Jack Campbell. Not that Jack Campbell hadn't been fantastic in the regular season, but the playoffs are a whole nether battle. And this is, his first time taking on that starter role. And in no thought in my mind ever would it have been Austin Matthews and Mitch Marner, not that I'm pinning it entirely on them, but them not being able to create anything, because Price played stellar. Don't get me wrong, but Nylander was able to find the back of the net, and the Nylander-Kerfoot pairing together were magic. I mean, they were really, really good together. And I feel like I underestimated Danault and how good he is defensively to be able to keep the shot opportunities away from those high danger chances. I believe in game 7 going into the third period, the Leafs had 0 high danger scoring chances. It was something I saw on Twitter, could be wrong, but it was so weird to me that it wasn't a goaltending flaw that happened on the Leafs side. And I don't even know how you would go about in the offseason trying to fix that. And I hope the Leafs don't try and fix it, because I think it'll just come back. Like I don't think getting rid of Marner, getting rid of Matthews in the offseason is going to be your answer. It could be, but I don't think it is.
Well, yeah, Zach, I think you just cracked open a huge can for me. So, Dylan, I'm gonna let you do your show, but I might have to jump off here on a couple of tangents.
Yeah, not a problem. That's literally what this is for. Now, Zach, we kind of already touched on it a bit, but what do you think Montreal did so well in this series to not only push it to Game 7, but to solidify that Game 7 win?
You know, I think Montreal's game plan is super unorthodox compared to other teams, because our first line, which we don't really have, we have a bunch of situationally first lines or situationally second lines, because Danault with Gallagher and whoever we had on the wing, because it kept rotating, that is our first line, but only to play against other teams' first lines to shut them down. And I think at the core, Montreal is built to play against a team like Toronto, who has one really, really big forward line, 2 big forward lines, because we can throw the Danault line out and match him against the other top lines. We know Danault's not going to get many points, but he's also going to take away points. And then we were able to find, once Caulfield got into the lineup, now we have this scoring line that we can put out there with Toffoli, Suzuki, Caulfield, and try to line match them with the second and third lines of other teams, keep them away from the top matchup and let them kind of do the scoring prowess. And I mean, Kotkaniemi's goals were a nice add-on, and having Josh Anderson on the third line is something that's is invaluable to a playoff team.
Absolutely. Now, Clark, why do you think Toronto's top line couldn't produce?
So it's interesting though that Zach brought up the Danault line and how good they did defensively and stuff, because it seems like every single year, the last few, especially, remember our chat last time, Dylan, is that, Columbus, Boone Jenner, Riley Nash, those guys, and Nick Foligno, those guys, every single time they were on the ice, they were just a defensive problem for the Maple Leafs against the Blue Jackets last year. The year before that against Boston, again, I believe, Bergeron, Krejci, those guys were just defensive problems. And it just seems like now with Montreal, they brought out Danault for the whole regular season. For whatever reason, the Leafs were able to handle Philip Danault's defensive prowess and whoever else they threw out there. But as soon as that, like I said, as soon as they got ahead in Game 5 and 6, and then I guess into Game 7, it just seemed like the players got into this mental state of not being able, like, no confidence. They lost all of their confidence. I don't know if that's from, like I said, if that's from past years where this has happened to them, or what it is in their head. But it seemed like it was more mental than necessarily physical, because clearly they all have the skill to do it. We saw it all year long. We saw it in Game 4. We saw it in Game 2. Like, I don't know quite what is going on with this team, but I massively agree with Zach on this one, where I don't think that the management staff needs to go out and say, we failed this year, so we have to dump everybody and bring in a whole new group. And I tweeted a few times, I've been watching a lot of people's opinions on this. I've been trying to weed out the most crazy ones on both sides to try to stay with a middle focus on this. But I have seen some massive overreactions from this fan base. And it's extremely disappointing, because for years, and Dylan, you'll remember this from your wee days as a Leafs fan back in the day. But this is what the Leafs used to do constantly every single year. If they lost, they would go out and dump everything they had in the prospect bins and bring in 38-year-old former superstars. And not that that's what they're going to do now, but that's the approach that they used to have, and everybody hated it. And now it seems like the fan base, for whatever reason, is back on that, and they want that to happen again, where, they need to make these massive changes every single year. And that's just not how you build a stable, consistent franchise. And I'm just getting really upset and disappointed with all of these people just saying that Marner needs to go and Matthews isn't good enough and he's going to leave anyway, so you might as well trade him and get Morgan Riley out now while you have a chance, and all these things. And it's like, guys, don't you know we've been waiting for this? We've been waiting for this for 15 years. We've been waiting for a first line center since Matt Sundin left. We've been waiting for a superstar winger since Alex McGillney left. We've been waiting for all these guys since we haven't had a top line offensive defenseman since Thomas Kaberle left. Like, what are we trying to do shipping all these guys out all of a sudden? And I feel like that's why I made a video. You guys saw it probably, but right as soon as the game was over, I made a video and I'm like, you know what, I'm stepping back from this one for a little bit because I'm already seeing it go crazy. And I've started to kind of eke my way back into some videos because I can't help it. But it's just we need to calm down majorly. And I hope that management isn't feeling the way that the fans are. I hope management is feeling the way I'm feeling, where it's like, let's take a few weeks and really reflect on what we have right now and how to make that better instead of changing everything.
Right. And like, it might be hard to look at this series loss and just go, well, because like, as destructive as it is to the morale of a team, because I believe I saw that this Canadiens team was the worst point percentage team that the Leafs have faced since like 86 or something like that. And losing to a team like that can be devastating and could put this seed in management's head. But in reality, Austin Matthews is the best goal scorer in the NHL. Yep. Mitch Marner is one of the best playmakers in the NHL. You can't trade these two and then pick up a piece that is going to make this team a completely different, better team in a scope. Obviously you could, I guess, but those aren't moves that you want to make. And I think Dubas is going to have his work cut out from year in and year out, filling out the bottom six of the forwards and the bottom pairing on defense, because there is a lot of money tied up in the top six. And it doesn't leave a whole lot of flexibility for filling out the bottom of the roster. So then you have to give guys a shot and then realize that didn't work so much. Maybe a Joe Thornton, which I don't think he'll come back. I think Spezza will. But it's going to be a consistent rotation of guys, and eventually something's going to click. You're going to hit the jackpot on a couple of veterans or a couple of defensive stalwarts who are going to fill out that bottom six. And then all of a sudden, Leaf fans are going to go, hold on, wait, Matthews is a Rocket Richard winner. We have a sick goalie. We have a good top four on defense. And it's just the bottom six that's going to plug it up and make it seem like a more complete team, I think.
Yeah.
But don't you know that they're going to trade Mitch Marner for Jack Eichel? Or wait, no, they're going to trade Mitch Marner for Artemi Panarin. Oh, no, wait, sorry. They're going to trade Mitch Marner for Drew Doughty. Oh, shoot. No, sorry, it wasn't Drew Doughty. It was I can't remember, but they're going to, I think they're going to trade him straight up for Nikita Kucherov.
Oh, really?
No, it's going to happen. Don't worry. They're going to trade Mitch Marner for somebody. It's going to be great. I'm joking.
Now, this question kind of popped into my head as I was listening to you guys. This season was not like any other, and I'll get both of you to talk about it. But do you think maybe the reason for Montreal knowing how Toronto plays was because they played 10 regular season games against them?
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought about it in that regard, but it's the fact that the Leafs won 7 of those 10 games, to me, still kind of boggles my mind that they weren't able to figure it out for 3 straight games in the playoffs. But at the same time, Zack can allude to this, and I'll let him kind of talk on it. But Montreal wasn't the same team for a 10-game stretch for pretty much any of the season. And like early on, they were dominating teams. A lot of that was Vancouver, but you know how it is. They were still dominating. And yeah, exactly. And then they kind of went through that rough stretch for a little bit. Then they fire their coach. They bring in a new coach that Zack loves, and and then and then they had different stretches where Gallagher's hurt, Weber's hurt, this guy's hurt, this guy's hurt, this guy's coming up. They signed Cole Caulfield. None of it, like, they had so many different little stretches, and by the time they got to the playoffs, they kind of put it all together. Especially, like, I think after the trade deadline, they got Stahl, and who else did they get the trade deadline, Zach?
We picked up John Merrill and
Yeah, okay.
Eric
Gustafson.
Gustafson.
Yeah, right. So
Played
like they got
horrible last night. Side note, sorry, continue, but he played so bad.
he played okay against the Leafs, but basically what I'm trying to get at is they seem to be kind of a scrambly team, and every single time the Leafs played them in the regular season, it was a different story. And then they got to the playoffs, and you get Gallagher back, and Weber's back in the lineup, and Carey Price is back in the lineup after he wasn't for most of the end of the season, and Caulfield's kind of establishing himself, and he's getting more confidence, and Kotkaniemi has a chip on his shoulder from being scratched in game one, and all these different little things kind of just added up to this team coming together in a way that you hadn't seen all year long. And I don't think the Leafs were ready. And I think if there's any judgment that I would place on the team, yes, the players didn't do a good enough job, but I don't know the coaching staff's game plan and why it didn't seem to work. Like, what were they seeing that wasn't working? I'd be very curious to be a fly on the wall at a year-end coaches meeting for that conversation and just see what they thought they were trying to do and why it didn't work in their eyes. I'd love to know that, but and that's where I could see some changes happening in the offseason is maybe the assistant coaches. Seems like the assistant coaches always are the first ones to get swapped. And a lot of people are complaining. I saw a stat, I think it was Nick Alberga tweeted it out, but from February to the end of the season, or maybe even including the playoffs, I think their power play was like 22 for 130 or something. And you guys can do the math on that. Let me just see if I can really quick do the math on that, but not good. Basically, this is a power play that should be shooting 25 to 35%, 5%,
5.9.
Yeah. So like that's epically low, especially when you have the Rocket Richard winner and a top 5 point scorer on your team. That's wrong. That's just wrong. So I think that was Manny Malholtra's job. I think he was the power play coach.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going to see any changes, I think you're going to see a swap in the assistant coaches. I think who else is there? Is Dave Hackstall still there? Who was the coach that basically led the Flyers to an epic collapse those couple of years? So I think they're going to have to make some changes in the assistant coaching world at the very minimum. I do not think that Sheldon Keefe will or should get fired. He hasn't had a training camp yet. He's still a young up and coming coach who's won at every level. I don't think his winning percentage with the Leafs is crazy. So I don't think he's the guy who goes, but they're going to have to make some personnel changes because there's some mindset stuff and some gameplay stuff, game plan stuff that just wasn't good enough.
Yep.
So I'm not entirely sold that the 10 games was that huge of a difference. Obviously it plays an impact, but if you see how the 5-1 loss and 4-0 loss went for the Habs, like that, I think was the turning point where Ducharme went, and I do not like Ducharme, but I'll talk on that later. He decided that changes needed to happen, and the power play looked different. Our entire game plan switched up and looked different. And I think that's kind of where, and I don't put blame on Keefe in this whatsoever, but I don't know why Matthews and Marner stayed together is my biggest thing. If they're not producing together and Nylander is, why not switch them possibly that could get something going, maybe even just for a period or in the game, because he throws lines in the blender all the time. Keefe likes to throw situational matchups and stuff like that, and I think that's a great idea. But why not give Matthews and Nylander a little bit of a stint together and see how that goes, and then put Marner with Kerfoot, where like the Habs did a lot of that. We had a lot of line switching until we find something that worked, especially consistently switching out the defense, which Romanov never got a game, and I still don't like Ducharme for that. But I am impressed by how Ducharme was able to consistently have the right guys out there at the right time. So I will give him props for that. But I still don't understand how Romanov is not in the lineup. And if he's not in the lineup next game, after the awful play that Gustafsson made to give them a free shorthanded goal. I want to slap this guy in the side of the head. Like Romanov is a playoff built defender. He's young, don't get me wrong, but the guy is solid on the puck, throws solid hits. He's a guy who would thrive in the playoffs. And Ducharme also has this fun little habit of never actually like saying anything useful. Today he was in an interview and he said, it's unlikely that we roll 11 forwards and 7 defenders for the next game, but maybe. How is that even a possibility? Because Evans got hurt. How, between having a healthy Tatar and Lehkonen, are you going to go for 7 defenders over 11 forwards? He's never going to do that. So why say it? It's comments like that. And I don't know. I'm not sold on him yet, but Julien had to go.
Yeah. Zach, I think you need to make a video about how you don't like Dominic Ducharme and then put it on TikTok.
I've made a couple of them.
I know.
I've been a little bit outspoken about my distaste for Ducharme, but because we beat the Leafs, he's going to be back next season and he'll have a full season, and maybe my opinion will change on him because it hasn't been tough. It has been a tough season for him, but oh man, there's just something about him. I don't know what it is. I think Julien needed to go. Ducharme, sure. But I want Yoel Bouchard next season at some point in time, is what I was saying before the playoffs. Now that I see him in the playoffs, I don't think it's going to happen anymore. And Bouchard will stay in the AHL, but I don't think Ducharme's our guy. But he'll prove me wrong, as the Habs always do,
I guess we'll find out in this second round, maybe. Now we kind of touched on it, but the hottest thing coming out of the loss was between the Leafs and the Habs was that the fans were trying to run Mitch Marner out. Clark, I know you have a very strong opinion and you made a video about it. What should they do with the team this offseason, if anything at all?
Yeah. So I've made my thoughts pretty clear that I don't think they should make many massive changes. I don't think this is the offseason to make some knee-jerk reaction to what just happened. It was a weird year for everybody, and I know that everyone was on the same playing field. And yeah, if you're looking at it numbers wise and on paper, they should have at least gotten out of the first round, and probably you would think to the third round. That was the expectation. But with everything going on with the team, with how many free agents they have, with it being a Seattle off season, with Seattle coming in, and with it being a draft that really nobody knows anything about, honestly. You saw, if you watched the draft lottery, they interviewed Steve Yzerman afterwards, and they're like, so, what kind of prospects are you expecting to get? Because I think Detroit ended up with pick number 6, and he was like, I don't know. He's like, I'm not sure. And it's like, that's very telling. And I know I'm paraphrasing what he actually said, but I've talked to a couple of scouts that I know from, the shows that I work for. We talked to a few people, and one of my good buddies, Joel Henderson, on Twitter, he's at Dat Hockey Dough. He told me months ago, like this was even before all the rankings came out. He's like, you're going to see a draft this year where number 1 is as good as number 12. And that's not saying it's a weak draft, but it's saying that number 1 is as good as number 12. There's no clear cut number 1, and there's 10 or 12 guys that could be hypothetically number 1 caliber guys. And then he said, also what's going to happen is once you're past those 12 or 13 or 14 first round guys, pretty much everyone else is completely on an even playing field, because nobody saw these guys in regular types of seasons. So what that did for the draft was basically throw it into a blender. And to me, I've been getting people yelling at me that the Leafs traded away all their draft picks and they have terrible asset management and all these things. And again, I'm trying to zen myself out from all this stuff so I don't freak out on everybody, because I don't want to be that guy either. But they have 3 draft picks this year, but those 3 draft picks could end up being just as good as anybody else's 8 draft picks, just because I'm just looking at the management staff, because I was checking out the coaching staff. So they have more assistant coaches and assistant GMs than Buffalo has in their scouting department completely. So it's like the Leafs have the biggest budget in the entire league for this kind of stuff. If they're going to hit home runs with anything, it's going to be these 3 draft picks. And the other thing for that is like, guys, anybody who brings this up, and I don't want to go off on too long of a tangent here, but if anybody brings this up, it's like, like they're allowed to trade for extra draft picks, right? Like they can make trades. They can trade down and acquire extra ones. They can trade other years to get into this one. It's just, it's not final that they only have 3 draft picks. There's stuff that's going to happen this summer that's going to blow people's minds. And I think that a lot of people are just not there yet in terms of their mindsets, because it's going to be with Seattle coming in and there being a flat cap. There's going to be a lot of teams in trouble. And I think the Leafs right now are actually sitting okay because they have a lot of flexibility with how many free agents they have, how many prospects they actually still have retained. You remember, they didn't trade a single prospect at the trade deadline, and they've drafted 27 of them in the last 3 drafts alone. The only one they've traded is Sean Dursey. That was for Jake Muzzin. I'll take it any day of the week. So like they have about 25 guys they could just throw into their prospect blender at any time. So I'm not looking at this offseason as panic mode. I'm looking at it as a chance to continue building on what they've been building for 5 years. And if they start throwing it out the window now, you might as well just burn it and start all over again, because like this is what they've built for. There's no reason to look at this team and be like, yeah, no, we got to get rid of everybody. This isn't good. They're all 22, 23, 24 years old. And this is the point where these guys start to become the winners that we've seen in Washington and Pittsburgh and Boston and all these other places that everyone wants to emulate all the time. This is what happens. I saw a graphic. Sorry, I'll stop after this. I saw a graphic today, and it was Boston's playoff success before they won the Stanley Cup. And it was out in round one, lockout, out of playoffs, out in round one, out in round two, out in round two, Stanley Cup champions. Washington, for example, was when after they drafted Ovechkin, it was out in round one, out in round one, out in round two. Basically just repeat that for like 12 years, Stanley Cup champions. So it's like, I get the frustration, but I'm also trying to think of this in a long-term thing, is that they've been out in round one. They were massive underdogs to Washington in 2017. Out in round one to Boston, massive underdogs. Out in round one to Boston, that was a little bit closer. Columbus, they fired their coach halfway through the year. So I'm trying to just eliminate that one from my memory banks. And that was also David Ayers and all these other things. And then this year was just a mess. But I don't think this is a point in our history where we need to start getting out in the playoffs or out of the playoffs in that type of stuff again. We need to continue to at least make pushes every single year going forward from now on.
Absolutely. And this is like what, the first year that we're actually contenders in the league to win the Stanley Cup. So
that was my other point. And that was what I said on my show, the Squadcast, the other night was, Matthews gets drafted. I think that's the start of your 5-year window of a rebuild. And, Nylander was the year before that. Yes. But that's basically the start of when you can say, okay, our rebuild starts now. And then for the first 3 or 4 years, they were building to a point where they could be considered a winner. John Tavares gets added, which accelerates all of that and throws it completely into a different stratosphere. So that was a weird year. But this year to me was the first year where at the trade deadline, they're like, we're going for it this year. We got Nick Foligno, we got Ben Hutton for extra depth. We got all these things at the trade deadline. And this is the first year we're actually going for it. Last year, they didn't make a single trade at the trade deadline. The year before that, they were like filling in little holes. So this year to me is the first year they've really committed to it. And that's what I foresee happening for at least 3 or 4 more years. I don't think it's time to start blowing stuff up.
Right. So now like Zach and I spoke about the season being a very tough one for the Habs, going through coaching change, et cetera, et cetera. They finished only 4th in the North, and they clearly nobody didn't. Oh my God, gibberish. Although it didn't matter in the playoffs. But at one point, I think Bergevin's job was definitely in jeopardy during the season. Now with not only Kotkaniemi having an unbelievable start to his playoff career and some other young talent showing up, Zach, who do you think really saved his job, or do you think he could still be fired?
Well, I can't remember a year that Bergevin's job hasn't been in jeopardy. He's been given the longest leash out of any GM I can even think of. He's gotten 2 full rebuilds. That doesn't happen, right? And I don't think there's a single, like, one specific player that I can pick out that really saved it for him. The only thing I can really think of is getting Caulfield in that draft, but that was up to luck because Caulfield, although he isn't putting up a whole ton of points right now, he looks phenomenal out there, and he's going to be a huge piece to us in the future. But I can't really pick out one specific thing that saved him. I think it's more, we're currently moving in this direction. You got to give me one more year, because we continuously make these moves, like picking up Edmondson, making the Josh Anderson trade. That's like, okay, this is going to be it. This is now going to turn us into that playoff contending team. And he continuously upgrades minimally to make it look like we're going somewhere, but we always kind of look the same. And then we just got to kind of hope that our depth does a little bit better than the year before, and that we can pick up some young kids. And, Kotkaniemi is still a big question mark to really what his ceiling is. I am absolutely massive on him. I think the sky's the limit for that kid. And although Suzuki is a better player now, I think it's going to be a lot closer, give a couple more years, to who is going to be the 1 and who is going to be the 2 for Montreal. As long as Kotkaniemi doesn't lose patience, because he's got 4 goals in 7 games, and they're still only giving him like 11 minutes of ice time, which I would like to see bumped up, but it's also tough. But anyways, quick side note, I think he's 1 goal off of tying Crosby and Gretzky for most goals in the playoffs by a U21 centerman.
I was going to say that.
So clearly he's the best centerman the NHL's ever seen. He's out here breaking Gretzky's records. Like, he's just he had more goals than Matthews and Marner combined. I mean, the kid is just I can tell you like that one, Clark.
Yeah.
But it's these draft picks that are now coming to fruition, and this is the final rebuild that he's going to be given, because Suzuki, Caulfield, Kotkaniemi, that for us is what you guys getting Marner, Matthews, Nylander. They're not on the same level. Don't get me wrong that way, but that's the movement that we're in, is we have these 3 big pieces on forwards who are young and coming up through the system, that if we can't do it with these guys, then Bergevin's gonzo, and he knows that.
Right. Yeah, no, the reason why I asked that was because I just think of the moment after Game 7 there. Bergevin's down there, and he's just patting Carey Price on the back, and it's like, I think he saved his job. Like, I'm not gonna lie. If Carey Price did not show up in the playoffs and they lost in the first round, I think Bergevin would have been gone.
Yeah, no, that's completely valid. And Price, I mean, he gets paid $10.5 million for exactly that. I mean, he is our team. He's our backbone. He makes twice as much as almost any other guy on the team. The only one that he doesn't make twice as much of is Shea Weber. Like, he gets paid Matthews money, so he needs to have the same impact that ideally Matthews would have. And in goalie, it's either you have the fate of your team in your hand, and you can either cuddle it and love it, or you can throw it on the ground and stomp on it. And Price, every time it hits the playoffs, he just coasts, and he just stops everything that's thrown at him. And it's something that we can't replace. Like, seeing people at the beginning of the season going, oh, we should, we got to leave Carey open and hope that Seattle takes him. That is throwing everything in the garbage. Like, he is getting up there in age, yes, but he can't be replaced.
Right.
The crazy stat that I saw, and you guys might have saw it too, was that Carey Price is the first ever player to have a $10 million annual average value on his contract and win a playoff series. No other player has ever done that, and that's pretty wild to me because the Leafs have 3 of those guys, and now that worries me.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a crazy stat.
So it's funny because I saw that, and then I was thinking to myself, I'm like, so no player has ever gotten paid more than $10 million, but it's average annual value. So somebody made a point of back in like the 90s or whatever, Sergei Fedorov for the Red Wings was making like $28 million in a single season. But for however they had it structured, his AAV, like his actual cap hit was only like $6.8 million or something stupid. So I don't know how that works, but I had to think about it for a sec because it kind of blew my mind that stat was the case. The carry price, that's wild. That's wild. So, and I thought about it too, is like the first over $10 million cap hits were Kane and Taves. Like if you really think about it, so there's only been for like 5 or 6 or 7 years guys with those types of cap hits. So it's kind of a new era. So that stat is like, it sounds wild, but it's not really crazy if you think about it in that regard.
Right. Now I'll give both of your opinions about this, but do you think Montreal's unwillingness to give up was the reason for the comeback, or did Toronto just collapse?
It's an interesting way to put it. I think it was like I said earlier, I think it was a combination of Montreal kind of gaining that momentum in game 5, going up early, and then just playing just the absolute metapod defense. If you guys are Pokemon fans at all, just harden. Just harden. That's all they did. And I think it was that. And I think the frustration was obvious for the Leafs. They couldn't get anything working at all. And, you know, when you have a situation, and this isn't an excuse, but when you have a situation where you lose your number 2 center 9 minutes in or 11 or whatever it was into game 1, it puts you in a position where one of your strengths all year long was being able to rely on not having matchups. So you could figure out how to get Matthews away from Danault if he's riding him hard. And basically with having Kerfoot come in as your second line center after being third line center or winger most of the year. They played pretty good that one game. They got all those points with Galchenyuk or whatever. They had a good game, but forcing them into that situation that they're just not suited for necessarily, and having Montreal being able to just shut down Matthews and Marner, it just changed the whole dynamic of the series. And obviously Toronto was able to get away with a couple of games at the early onset of the series. But as time went on, you just saw Montreal figure it out. And again, I said it earlier and I'll say it every day, but Montreal played a masterful series at the end. Those last 3 games were just a masterclass on how to beat the Leafs. And I think anybody going forward needs to watch this series and say, well, that's how we need to do it. So that's the way I look at it. But I'll let you go ahead, Zach. What do you think?
Well, I think, you know, we got a couple lucky bounces in there as well, especially Galchenyuk forgetting what team he played for. But, you know, I think being able to hop on the Leafs early, get a couple of goals, and then the Canadiens, although not being the most skilled team, playing them in a 7-game series is hard because every single player throws hits. I saw Caulfield try to hit TJ Brody. It didn't work very well, but he tried. I mean, he bounced off, but like Paul Byron led the team in hits through the first 4 games, and he's like 5'9". Gallagher, all of these guys, everyone is willing to throw everything they have in every single hit. And that's hard to take game after game after game. And the Leafs did acquire more grit, because I know Leafs Nation had been screaming to pick up more grit. And I think it was a good move. But Simmons himself, Foligno, who I think is still a fantastic pickup, you know, in contrast to Hall going for a second, but that's not their fault. Picking up these 2 guys is a great addition, but, you know, Simmons has the grit, but he doesn't have the speed or the skill. Foligno is a great defensive player, but he can't play 23 minutes a night. And I think what the Canadiens have built is specifically to play against teams like the Oilers, the Leafs, all like the Lightning's a bad example because we're nowhere close to the Lightning, but we're built to play against these teams with star caliber players, where I think that if the Canadians make it past the Jets, and we end up going against a Boston, or I don't even know who would be in our matchup next. I forget at this point, but
I think it doesn't it like reseed after this.
Does it? I
Yeah.
forget.
Yeah. So how it works is round 3. So whoever is the top seed from the regular season, whoever has the most points or whatever, is going to be number 1, and then the worst seed will be 4. So hypothetically, next round, I think if Montreal wins and beats Winnipeg, and let's say Colorado gets through, Montreal will play Colorado next round.
I mean, Colorado is very.
It all depends. It all depends. If it'll
Yeah.
be Vegas, Colorado, or Tampa or Carolina. So either way, I think you're screwed. But
Yeah, I don't like our odds, but
and I'm not saying that it's just you. Like, I think if the Leafs got to the 3rd round and had to play any of those teams, it would have been the same situation. I'm just saying, if Montreal specifically gets to play one of those teams, it might be a tough go.
oh, I mean, McKinnon is just another animal. I don't ever want to go against that guy in the playoffs. I mean, like, he's got what? Last time I saw, he was at like 11 points, something like that.
13, something like
12.
13. So it's just crazy. Like, the guy he's magic.
He had 12 through 5 games. I don't know if last night's included in that, but
it's crazy. I hope the Canadians can go far, but anyways, I think it was a mismatch going. Once the Canadians got on top, it was really hard for the Leafs to get back into it. And we saw it in the 2 games that the Leafs won heavy-handedly. As soon as the Leafs got on top, the Canadians were struggling. They couldn't get back in because we don't have that star talent that'll just be able to take the puck from one side of the ice, go down the other side, make everyone look stupid, and put it in the net. We don't have that. Maybe one day, but not quite yet. And I think it just comes down to, I think the Canadians wanted it more in the last 3 games. And that might sound conceited to say, but it just looked like the Canadians were like, nah, dude, like, you think we're losing, but we're not losing. And that was just the mentality that they went into every game with.
Right. Now, I don't think goaltending was definitely at all the problem. Carey Price stood on his head with a .926 save percentage, and Jack had a .934 through it. If either of you can dissect Price's game, how would you describe how he played in the series, and why couldn't he be beat?
Carey Price's positioning is just like the best in the league. Like, it's just he's able to play so calm and composed, whereas you see some other guys, like, they seem to always be out of the net or out of position, or if there's a cross ice pass, they're diving for it or whatever. Carey Price, like, there was a cross ice one-timer from, I think it was Marner to Nylander late in the series. I think it was game 7. And Carey Price got like a full 8 inches of pad on it, like not even a toe save. Like, he was across, he was there ready for it. And I think he's one of the most intelligent goaltenders in the league, where he just like knows exactly what's coming next. He's got such a good vision for the ice, and I don't think it's matched by a whole lot of guys. Maybe like a Vasilevsky is going to be the next one like that for a long time. But Jack Campbell's got this ability to have a team want to win for him, and that's why he was such an enigma for the roster. Basically, when Freddie Anderson couldn't get it done, and Jack Campbell goes 17-2-2 for the regular season, and then comes into the playoffs and puts up a .934 and a .181 goals against. It's like, he's the type of guy, and he puts it all on himself. He's the type of guy that these guys want to win for. And it's just such a shame that it had to end this way because of the way Gallagher scored on him, and it went through his legs. And he's just internalizing that for the rest of his life. Like, he's never going to forget that. I'm more sad for Jack Campbell than almost anybody on the team, because he's going to feel just so bad about it. And that's just the type of guy he is. But it's great that we have him under contract for next year for such a cheap contract too. So I'm hoping that he gets another chance to kind of redeem himself. But Carey Price, it just becomes a whole different beast that's unmatched when it comes to playoffs and Olympics and all these big moments. If you guys go back to my video that I made on TikTok about the Canadian Olympic goaltending roster, and I put Carey Price as the starter, go look at some of the comments. It's hilarious how people were writing him off, and I almost want to stitch my own video and bring that one back and just be like, so what do you guys think now? Like, but anyways, it's unbelievable to me how Carey Price is able to do this year after year. He did it last year. He does it almost every year. He's just able to take over completely.
Yeah, and like what Carey Price's biggest strength is exactly what Clark just said, is his vision, his intelligence, and how he can just laser focus into even the smallest detail and be able to read that and be there and make it look easy. And that's also what becomes a detriment to him as well, because you can see almost immediately if he doesn't put a rebound exactly where he wants, it's because something else is on his mind. That's what I think anyway. So when the team isn't performing well or something is going on, and maybe, you know, you could blame stress or COVID or whatever you want to blame it on, is why Price wasn't fully in it, because that's exactly what was wrong, is he wasn't in it mentally, I don't think. I mean, I'm not a therapist, I'm not Price's best friend, but like just from watching the games, that's what I see. And I'm going to bring this up. Campbell played fantastic. He only let in one bad goal, and that was the Gallagher shot. And other than that, he played near phenomenal throughout the entire game, like 7 games. Are you worried at all about going into next season, having Campbell maybe take that starter role, and if Freddie will even be back? Because we just saw Jordan Binnington, who took the St. Louis Blues all the way to the Cup, and he got this nice contract, and now he's not looking so hot. I don't think he's completely written off, but do you have any doubt that Campbell isn't going to be that guy next year? Do you think it's a risky move?
Well, for me, Dylan, you can answer obviously as well, but for me, it's a situation where they're kind of almost, they have no other choice. But I look at the last few Stanley Cups, and like Anton Khudobin had a magical run for the Stars, and as you go back, you look and you see both, maybe not both starters, but there was always at least one starter in the Stanley Cup final that has either never been there before, has a small contract, is a rookie. Matt Murray has been a journeyman his whole career, and then he's just found himself in the right situation. Antti Niemi with the Blackhawks way back. There's always a guy like that every single year. And I think, you know, the NHL is such that it's completely random, and you just have to go with a guy who gives yourself a chance to win. And I think Jack Campbell showed nothing but that this year, that he's only 30. He's been around the league for like 12 years already. He's 30 years old. I think if anybody deserves a chance after this season, I think it's him. I think you got to let him run with it. Now, here's the thing. He's going to be super cheap. We don't know what's going on with Freddie Anderson, but you know, who's going to be his tandem guy? Because I don't think you want to go slap him with 65 starts next year. So are you going to bring Freddie back and try to split him? Are you going to bring David Riddick back? Are you going to go out and get somebody completely different? Are you going to use one of the young guys that they have in their prospect pool, like Joseph Wall or Veini Vivalainen, who they traded for earlier this year from Columbus, the Finnish goaltender? So there's some options there, but I don't know. That's why I'm the more I think about how crazy this summer is going to be, I just can't wait to get there. I want these questions answered, because I'm just trying to figure out in my head. And you know, at the end of the day, I mean nothing to what's actually going to happen. So I'm just trying to wait and figure out what's going on, because I'm curious too.
Now, I think the Leafs have always kind of been behind their goalie, but I think there's something about Jack's attitude in the locker room that really molds him with the rest of the guys. He's so friendly. Like, he's American, but he certainly does not act American. I'll tell you that for sure. And to be honest, I think like he's kind of like a Mitch Marner in the locker room. He's always loved. And I think that's the reason why I think the entire team believes him, but I think he's come a long way from when he was drafted in Dallas to going to LA and completely turning his life around with the goaltending coach. Now I think a bit of mental might hurt him in a couple games here and there, but I truly believe that Toronto has his back, and that Austin Matthews quote that was said, it said, "Don't worry, we'll get you next time," or something like that. And I think for a player on the team to say that, I think it says a lot about Jack Campbell as a whole.
Yeah, I would agree. I think they give him a chance next year, and it's just a matter of who they tandem him with, because they probably will have to go cheap on it, and they can't go out and spend $5 million on somebody else to come in. So, and Freddie Anderson's not getting $5 million. So it's going to be Freddie coming back for cheap, or they're going to have to go with an internal option, or bring back David Riddick.
I think it'll be Riddick.
It could be. That's where I don't know, because there's going to be a lot of juggling this summer, and it's going to be interesting. Riddick, I'd be fine with it. I actually like David Riddick in Calgary. He shut the Leafs down so many times, so it's like, oh, maybe now that he's wearing blue, it's actually going to work out for us. But we'll see. He didn't look great in the couple of games that he played when he got here, but he also only played a couple of games, and one of those was like flying in the airplane with Calgary with the team, and then playing the Flames with the Leafs that night or something. So I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into that, but it'll be an interesting summer to figure out who their goalies are.
Right. Now, before I head into kind of the most recent topic, do any of you have any other questions that you guys would like to talk about as a whole?
Well, I'm kind of itching, because I think I know what the final topic's going to be, and I'm kind of itching to get into it. So
yeah, for sure. Now, you guys both duetted me on TikTok, and we asked TikTok what you guys would like to know. And they all asked how you guys feel about the Jake Evans hit. So I'll give it away to the Habs fan first, and then I'll let Clark take it away.
Probably the good call. I think Zack has some feelings on this one.
Yeah.
Well, before getting into it, I'm checking Twitter, as I have basically every half an hour, to see, and it doesn't look like anything's been answered quite yet. Eric Engels is my guy for this, and I don't know how long it's going to take to get the final verdict out, but still nothing that I can see. My biggest issue, I don't think if you just show the clip of the hit that it is that bad of a hit. There is head contact, but it's not the initial point of contact, because he also got body, and Jake Evans was coming around the net. My biggest issue with it is that it didn't need to happen. It is so clear and obvious that Scheifele did not even attempt to make a play on the puck, because if I'm being honest, I think he could have stopped that puck from going in the net. If he didn't start coasting and he just full gave it the entire way, slashed his stick out, I think he would have got there before Jake Evans could put it in the net. But instead, he let up, trying to get away from the charging call, bring his stick up, prepare for a hit, and then just stepped into him. There was no jump before the hit, and I got slammed for this on TikTok because I said he didn't jump.
Yep.
He didn't. What happened is he went for that hit. And after he connected with that hit, his feet came up. He didn't jump up into the face of Jake Evans. He lunged forward, made contact with Jake Evans, and it's like you're preparing to run into a brick wall and the brick wall crumbles away. You're going to have that momentum carrying you forward as you break through Jake Evans. And I think it's super unfortunate, and I really hope Jake Evans is okay. I heard he didn't even go to the hospital, side note, which is crazy to me, that he was just accompanied by doctors and put back in the hotel room. I would have been sending him to the hospital for sure. I mean, he got knocked out cold before he even hit the ice. And it's definitely whiplash, concussion, whatever it is. They said it's only concussion, so I guess so. And it's a devastating blow for the Canadiens because he led the Canadiens forward core in ice time that game. That's how pivotal Jake Evans has been for us on that left wing playing on our defensive line. And my biggest issue is that Scheifele didn't even try for the puck. He went 200 feet, full blast all the way down and just teed him up, which is my biggest issue. And to me, that shows intent to injure. I don't think there was intent for head contact, but I think there was definitely intent to injure. It was a predatory hit, and it didn't need to happen, especially coming from a veteran guy like Scheifele on a rookie. I guess it's an unwritten rule or whatever, and Jake Evans is 24, so it's not like he crunched Cole Caulfield, a 20-year-old rookie, but he's still a rookie, and he teed him up from all the way down in the Canadian zone. That's my biggest issue with it.
Yeah.
That's it? I thought you were going to go way longer on that, Zach.
Well,
no, but I know. But here's what I'll say. If I can, I'll play devil's advocate. And by doing this, in no way am I saying this is okay or anything. I'm not condoning it. But, it's a 4-3 game. There's a minute left in the game. And Montreal is clearly winning the icing race on this one. Jake Evans had like a 30-foot lead on the icing race on that one. So in Scheifele's mind, and I'm putting myself in his mind here, he's going back to try to prevent a goal. So of course, if you're starting from the opponent's goal line, essentially, or at least the bottom of the faceoff circles, of course you're going to be gunning it. Like you're trying to get back. You're trying to prevent that goal. And you have to remember too, Mark Scheifele has been benched recently for not playing defense. So maybe in his mind, originally, this was him saying, I got to bolt back and I got to stop this somehow, or this could be on me completely. Because there's this narrative that I've heard from some certain people that, thank you, Jordan. I have my delivery guy bringing you my laptop power cable. There's a narrative out there, and it's essentially that, okay, so what if he just didn't skate? What if he stopped skating at the red line? And then just let the goal happen? Would he have been looked upon or frowned upon for not playing hard enough defense, for not giving a crap, for giving up on his team when it's a 4-3 game with a minute left? So there's that mindset. So I'm just trying to put some different mindsets out there for you guys.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing I think of is that, how often do you see a wraparound empty net goal? Not often. Now, when I say that, what if Jake Evans would have skirted the puck across the goal line and it didn't actually go in? So what if Scheifele is trying to play the body in case that play continues further than a missed net? So again, there's a minute left. If he misses that net and it goes into the corner instead of obviously in the net, then he's just playing the body. Play continues. It's a whole different conversation entirely. Is he hurt? Probably still. Yeah, it's still going to be the same result. But I'm just trying to put different mindsets in your head where him coming back as fast as he was, I don't personally think it was him pinning it for Jake Evans the whole time. I think 90% of it was him playing defense or trying to at least show to his coach and teammates that he cared and he wanted this game to not get out of hand and not be basically a lost cause with a minute left. That's my thing. I think once he got to the blue line of his own zone, he's like, there's nothing I can do here. But he's also going 120% speed. And, how are you slowing down from that? You still want to try to prevent something from happening. I've seen so many pictures breaking down frame by frame by frame, millisecond by millisecond, his body language and everything. But hockey doesn't happen millisecond by millisecond. It doesn't happen frame by frame. It happens, second by second. And it's hard to get into the mindset of how much time actually did he have in his mind to actually think about what was actually happening. And from all accounts, exactly. From all accounts, Mark Scheifele is not a dirty player. He doesn't have a history of being a dirty player. People who have played against him and with him have come out and said he's not one. And I can't imagine a scenario where he said, I almost swore, I'm going to end this guy. I don't think there was a spot in that whole scenario where he's like, yeah, I'm gonna end this guy. There might have been a millisecond of frustration as the goal was about to go in, and he's like, you know what, I'm already here, let's hit him. But I don't think at any time during that 200-foot skate, which is everyone's pointing out, was he thinking, I gotta end this guy's career. So that's devil's advocate. I still think he gets suspended. I still think that it was uncalled for. I still think that, there could have been other things he could have done, but hockey's a fast sport. That's all I'm saying. He was trying to play defense. I think it just got out of hand really fast. So there's my devil's advocate. Hopefully I didn't step on any toes. It's just another angle to think about when this is all being talked about.
Yeah. And like, I'm totally with you on that. I think the entire time he was coming back, and I genuinely admire the 200-foot skate, which is, I think, the biggest, like the biggest phrase in hockey right now is the 200-foot skate. Since that hit, everyone's saying that. And I think it's awesome. And I would think it's awesome right up until the point that he let up. And I think that's when his mental changed, because he's not letting up to come in and I'm going to, just get there and hit the stick. He's letting up so he doesn't get a charging call, is what I think. And I don't think he came in with, crazy mindset of I'm going to kill him, but he laid the check. And like, I think if he kept going full bore and hit the puck, I think he could have gotten there first. But that's, maybe here, maybe there. The fact is,
here's what happened. Can I just cut you off really quick?
Yeah.
So this is going to add to your conversation, but if he would have gone full speed, like say he didn't slow up at all, then we're looking at a scenario where he tries to play that puck and those guys collide head on head, because then he's reaching and he's leaning and his arms are in a spot where he can't brace himself. Yeah. And then you're looking at a complete collision, and then both guys are out. So this could have gone 100 different ways. The way it went is the way it went. And it's easy to look at different hypotheticals of, well, he should have done this or should have done this. But again, you said he slowed up, and from the time he slowed up to the time he hit him, he didn't write a novel in his head about the moral ethical dilemma that could come from him hitting this guy. And you have to remember too, when he slowed up at the top of the circle, Jake Evans was still not even wrapped around the net yet. He was still on the other side of the net. Mark Scheifele's not thinking, oh, you know what, he's going to be in a vulnerable position where he's going to be a little bit lower. I'm going to light this guy up, because his head's not going to be. He doesn't have time to think about that. It just happened. So I again, suspended, yes. Uncalled for, yes. But I think overanalyzation of some of this stuff is happening from every single person. And I've been refreshing the whole time too, Zach. I've been trying to figure. I'm looking over here at my laptop. I'm like, what are they going to give him?
How is it not out?
Well, I know. Well, it's it's NHL player safety. They're going to, that they're not the most consistent and reliable organization. But I think this is going to basically make or break the series. And I think if Mark Scheifele's out for, let's say 3 games, let's use that as kind of the middle ground, right? He could be 3 games or more, 3 games or less, or like, let's just say 3 games. That takes him up to game 5 until he's back. Could the series be over by game 5 already?
Depends how the Habs are
if
playing.
He's out of the lineup. Exactly. So I don't know. This is make or break for the Jets right now, depending on how many games Mark Scheifele gets suspended, because they haven't been playing Paul Stastny. They haven't been playing Pierre-Luc Dubois at center extremely, exclusively is the word I'm looking for. So their center depth with Mark Scheifele out takes a massive hit. So it's going to be interesting.
Stastny, I think, was going through some sort of illness or something like that, is what I saw on Twitter. Is that it's non-COVID related, but he's going through some sort of an illness. And if he comes back and Pierre-Luc Dubois goes at center, I mean, they still have a solid top 6, but it hurts without Scheifele there, because then you have to move someone up out of their bottom 6 that isn't all that offensively gifted. They have a good bottom 6, but it's a defensive.
I love their bottom 6.
It's a great shutdown bottom 6. But I think if you take anyone out of their bottom 6 and move them up into the top 6, they're nowhere close to as useful as they are as a bottom 6 player. Appleton and Kopp are 2 of my favorite players on that team. They give it 100% every single shift. and they're great bottom six guys. Kopp, I think, could move up the line and fill the gap, I guess, but not ideally. And losing Scheifele just, it would be a huge blow to them. I mean, I won't be too mad about it. I mean, but
could this be the emergence of Cole Perfetti though? This might be his opportunity to jump into the lineup now. He hasn't had a ton of ice time. He's played a few games with them, but like that's the type of guy that's going to have to step up. And we see it lots of years where Nick Robertson last year for Toronto came in and scored a big goal and kind of juiced up the team a little bit. And young guys come in all the time and kind of add that spark that the team didn't have before. So maybe this is an opportunity for Winnipeg to look at Perfetti and kind of put him into a big situation and see what happens with it.
Perfetti's good, man. He's got a ton of skill. He's one of my favorite young kids. He's a lot of fun.
Yeah. At the beginning of the hit, I honestly thought it was like 2 to 5 games, but I think it will definitely decide the series here.
There's a lot of it's really easy. It's 2021 and it's really easy right now, especially with how prominent social media is, to see this massive outpouring of disappointment for certain situations and just automatically think the worst. So it's very important, like for example, for George Peros, it's very important that he's not listening to thousands of people scream at him on Twitter for certain things, because there's a lot of emotional responses to this, not just from Montreal fans. This is league wide, and there's a lot of emotional responses to this, and they have to separate themselves and just straight up look at what happened and try to make a decision. So I hope that social media doesn't sway it one way or the other. I hope it's a very internal decision, and it comes out soon, because I want to know what happens.
and I'm only going to say this really quick, because I feel like especially on TikTok and Twitter, Montreal Canadiens, TikTokers and Twitter users are getting slammed by Leaf fans right now. And I think the majority of it is, these Leaf fans who will go on Twitter and just want to rile people up and want to get a reaction going in there and say, karma for JT or whatever. Like, it's just awful. Like, and I could understand a little bit more if the JT incident was full of a little bit more intent, but like, it's just awful to say, you deserve this or he deserved that. And like, Jake Evans wasn't even like on the ice. It had nothing to do with Jake Evans, and it just sucks to see. And like, Leaf fans, everyone has their opinion of Leaf fans, because there's so many of you. There's bound to be some more radical than others, and Habs fans are no better. We are just as crazy sometimes. And I think that's what makes hockey fun. But you have to take a step back and just think, this kid who just scored his first playoff goal on his birthday got slept in such a bad way. Like, you have to separate everything else from that. And just to say that you deserved it, or the Canadians deserve their karma, how does it feel? It just sucks, man.
I honestly
totally agree with that. Yeah.
Like, I like, John Tavares did not deserve what happened to him, and neither does Jake Evans. I don't think any of this has to do with each other, and karma doesn't even step into this at all. Like, they're human beings, for heaven's sakes. Like, that was a great episode. Thank you guys for coming on. I really enjoyed this. I'm sure Zack enjoyed this as well, considering this is the first time you and Clark are talking. So again, thank you very much. I'm sure we'll probably do this again.
I'd be more than happy to. And, maybe things have developed as far as the sea shanty goes. And I
have a beat. I got a beat. That's it.
That was a tough bet. That was a tough bet. He was
I really went all in for it.
Yeah, I got that. And at first I was like, well, I won't have to worry about it anyway. So this is a great bet for me. And now I have to worry about it. I'm like, dang it! I wish we would have just made a charity bet because I much rather would have just done a charity bet instead of this. But no, I'll get it. I'll get it eventually. Give me some
no
time.
rush. No rush.
It took me like 24 hours to like have another thought outside of like losing and depression. So now that I'm kind of settling back into normal life, I'll get it. Maybe
No
this weekend
worries.
I'll get one for you.
Yeah. All right. I'll be waiting.
Yeah.
Zach's
All right.
creativity really paid off in his little win in this playoff series, I guess.
Oh yeah. I saw that you accepted another profile picture challenge, Zach. That's good.
And
we
won
that
it.
one. We won that one, boys. It's
Yeah.
the first profile picture bet I've won. I'm on a streak now, boys. I've got 2 in a row in the bank.
Oh no, his head's getting bigger.
But there's a reason I don't make predictions. There's a reason I don't talk about what I think is going to happen in games beforehand, and why I haven't done any sort of pools or anything. Because if I say the Canadians are going to win, they're going to lose. And if I say the other team's going to win, they're going to win. So I just not talking about it.
It's great.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
All right. Thanks, Dylan.
No problem.
Yeah, it was fun.